This past week, I was downstairs. It was later at night, and I happened to be just doing some prayer and reading for this today. And at one point, my glasses, this thing that goes around my ear. Anybody know what you call that? But anyway, it just came off. Okay, and everybody's asleep, and I took a while to find the screw for it. The problem is when that happens and you take your glasses off, then you really can't see anything. Anybody ever have that happen? Yeah. So here I am, late at night, like this, looking for a tiny little screw, which thank God happened to land right on my Bible. Okay? But then I'm walking around looking for a small enough screwdriver, which of course we always have those, plenty of those laying around, right? No. All I could find were the really big screwdrivers, okay? Like Andre the Giant glasses screwdrivers, not for Rusty. And so, long story short, because y'all know I like to make stories long. Long story short, if you would have walked into my house at whatever time that was that night and saw me, you would have seen me with my prescription Ray-Ban sunglasses on, sitting on the couch with a kitchen knife. All right? I mean, if you would have walked in, you would have been like, oh my goodness, what's going on with him? He's totally lost it. And I'm sitting there and I'm trying to tighten the screw. It's dark because of the sunglasses, so there is clarity, but there's not. I'm in the dark. And if only we had cameras in the house and we could have video of that, somebody could definitely have fun. But anyway, I couldn't see. There is nothing worse. I would have never been able to dream, because I had good eyes until I was 40 years old. And I would have never dreamt that I would reach a point where no matter how hard I squinted, and no matter how hard I tried, that I can't see something. You can't see it. And here's the thing. I knew what it's supposed to look like. I know what the screw looks like. I know there's a little slit in there, and I know I'm supposed to be able to put it in there. That's the other thing. Get that thing started, just the threading of it. Right? It's awful. But I couldn't get there. I did. I eventually did by looking really dumb. But what we know in life is that seeing is so important. So important. And have you ever been in a conversation with somebody and they said to you, don't you see? And they weren't talking about your physical sight. Really what they're saying is, don't you understand? Try to understand. Don't you see? Open your eyes. For us husbands in the room, a lot of times it's open your ears and your eyes. It's a little different in my home, but we're not going to get into that because I'll get in trouble later. But seeing has more to do with just our physical sight. How many of you know that? There's so much about life than what we see in our emotional being and in our spiritual being. So much about life is about vision. And so the question that I want to pose to you this morning, that I want you to ask yourself over and over and over again today, is this. What is it that you don't see right now that if you could see it would change everything? What is it that you don't see right now that if you could see it, if it could come into focus, if it could be a reality in your life, and it could begin to take hold in your life and take life in your life, if I may say, it would change everything. It would change everything. Well, we're going to look today at a short passage. We're going to be in just that passage. So just relax. Don't relax too much, but you don't have to do a lot of turning. Not a lot of notes to take, but I love this passage from Mark 8, 22 through 26. And it talks about one of the many miracles that Jesus did in his ministry on earth. I actually have this book at home that gives all the miracles that Jesus did. And the book is this thick. It's this thick. It's amazing. It just goes through it. And he did many. But I love what I believe the Holy Spirit wants us to see in Mark 8:23-26, and we will read that together, and we'll stop a few times here and there throughout. But as you know, Jesus and the disciples are moving from village to village, right? They never stop moving, always moving. It'd be hard to keep up with Jesus, wouldn't it? It'd be hard to keep up. But that's what they were doing. And what they are dealing with is that you have these people who love seeing the miracles that Jesus did, right? They love the fact that he fed 5,000 people. Unbelievable. It's amazing. The fact that in chapter 7, he heals the deaf man. As soon as he gets off, they bring this man to him, and he touches him and he heals him, and there's miracle after miracle. And these people are loving it. They're loving it. But here's what I want you to understand. It doesn't mean that they really understood who Jesus was. They saw what he could do, which in the flesh, as you know, when we see what somebody can do, our flesh will cry out and say, well, maybe they could do that for you. And that's not a bad thing. But what they wanted him to do for them ultimately was not necessarily his mission. And I'm not going to get into the passage after this, but come back next week, because what you will see is that Jesus talks about how that to fulfill the plan, these people actually are going to have to turn against him. Okay? But yet in the midst of it, they're still bringing these people to have Jesus do miracles. And so starting in verse 22, it says, and they came to Bethsaida. And some people brought to him a blind man and begged him to touch him. Do another miracle. Do another miracle. Almost like he's just this supernatural miracle machine. Do another miracle. And listen, you think we would be feeling any different? No. No. Miracles are amazing. When God heals somebody, and I've seen it, I've had the pleasure a couple times of God using me in some of those situations. It's amazing. So they begged him to heal him. And it says that he took the blind man by the hand and led him out of the village. He said, all right, come with me. And he walked away and left everybody there. You imagine, hey, where are you going? Yeah, don't worry about it. We're going over here. He led him out of the village, took him by the hand and took him out of the village. And when he had spit in his eyes, I did not read that wrong. My sight is fine this morning, okay? It says, and when he spit, didn't even say, oh, yeah, and then Jesus did something really weird, and he spit in the guy's eyes. It's just nonchalant, like, hey, and when he spit in the guy's eyes, imagine if somebody did that to you. Don't do that, by the way. Like, if somebody wants prayer or whatever, like, you're not Jesus. I mean, don't do that, okay? Unless you have the clearest word of all words from God, all right? Don't do that. Now, me, the way I talk, it's probably going to happen a little bit anyway, but it's totally incidental. It says, and when he spit on his eyes and laid his hands on him, so he spit in his eyes and he laid his hands on him. Put yourself in that moment right now. And just see that. He puts his hands on him. And then he asks him a question. He says, do you see anything? Do you see anything at all? It says, and he looked up and said, well, I see people. I see people. But they all look like trees walking around. Now, I maybe have said this before in a message. I don't know, but I'm going to say it to you again. It's something that a professor of mine who was, honestly, it was the only professor I ever had that I feel like taught me anything that was, I remember his stuff to this day. I really don't remember all the other ones, to be honest with you. But he said, anytime somebody says the word but in a sentence, when they're talking to you about something that's going on, something that's bothering them, and there's a problem, when they say, yeah, but, listen to everything they say after they say that word. Because that is what's really going on. You're about to get exactly the information that you need to know what the problem is. It might have said a bunch of other things. And they'll go, yeah, but. You go, oh, let me listen. And this guy says, yeah, I can see them, but they look like trees walking around. Now, here's the first thing that comes out to me when I read that. And maybe it did to you right away. Obviously, this guy at one time in his life could see. He could see. How would he know what people look like? How would he know what trees look like? How would he know that the way that those people are walking around kind of looks like trees are walking around? At some point in his life, he could see. And I don't know when that happened. It doesn't tell us when that happened. I don't know how it happened. It doesn't tell us that. I don't know. There's a lot we don't know. You know, can I just say, it is not a bad thing that there's details that aren't given to us in Scripture, because I think that at some point we see the goodness of God, we see the miracles of God, we see what He's doing, and the power happens when we transfer what's happening in that man's life to our life. And so we don't need to know everything that happened in his life. We don't need to know how he lost his sight. We don't need to know all the pain that he went through. You can imagine how hard it was for him. But he had his sight at one time. He had his sight at one time. And here's the thing to realize about this guy. And here's the thing to realize about Jesus and his nature and his compassion. And that is this. This man had experienced loss. He lost something. Everybody in this room this morning has lost something. And I'm not talking about your keys. I'm talking about you've experienced loss. And you say, well, you know, Rusty, I've had a pretty good life. I really haven't lost anybody close to me. I didn't lose a bunch of money. Like I didn't go bank, whatever. We've all lost. I want to tell you a story. And before I tell you this story, I want you to understand that God has given me victory. He's helped me. Nobody needs to think that like I'm walking in woundedness here, okay? In fact, I probably wouldn't tell you the story if I still was. All right? So just don't come up to me like, hey man, and you'll hear in a second why. But the worst day of my life in school was when I was in 6th grade, and it was the worst year. How many 6th grade was like your worst year? I don't know. What is it about 6th grade and 10th grade? 10th grade. 2 of the worst years. Man, it was terrible. And on top of that, we were moving into the area, and we were local still, but we were building a house, and so it was a new school district. Brand new school. It was the first year of the middle school, so very intimidating, and I don't know anybody and everything. And but anyway, this one day was the worst day of my career in school, if you want to call it that. And it came down to just a few words that were spoken to me, and you know what they were? Rusty Willams is stupid. Rusty Willams is stupid. And you say, well, what was the kid's name? Well, it was my teacher. And she said it in front of the whole class. Yeah. I'll just tell you, I went to Norristown. So, nothing else needs to be said, all right? You know what? I'm very thankful for my experience at Norristown, but I don't have time to get into that. I got a different kind of education, and I'm thankful for it. But my teacher that day decided to say to me that when I put your test through the machine to score it, do you know what it said? And I said, no, what? It said Rusty Willams is stupid. Yeah, some of you don't even believe me right now. You're like, there is no way. I'm telling you. She did. She said that. And you know what? she wasn't the first person who had ever said that to me. She was just the only person besides me that said it. And this woman who decided in her life at one point to go and pay money to get an education, to pour into young people's lives over a 30-year career, hundreds of kids' lives that she impacted. She decided that day that she was going to validate one of my biggest insecurities and come into agreement with something that was spoken over me inside that had nothing to do with God. And that wasn't even the worst part of it. That wasn't the worst part of it. The worst part of it wasn't that when she sat with my dad and the guidance counselor and the principal, incidentally, my dad's statement to the principal and guidance counselor was, I don't need a machine to know who's stupid in that room. But anyway, we move on. He was a little angry. But she denied it, said that word's not in my vocabulary. I'm telling you this for a reason, okay? This isn't like get all our junk out on the table day, all right? We don't have a table big enough. But that that worst part wasn't even when she said that word's not in my vocabulary. I've never used that word in 30 years of teaching. Here was the worst part. The worst part is when she decided to ask the class whether she had said that to anybody. She says, class, I've been accused of calling somebody stupid. And nobody was crazy enough to speak up and like, yeah, I remember that. Yep. This was a teacher that would give you 2 detentions for going to the bathroom. Yeah. Nuts. Just crazy. Whatever. I'm not going to use her name this morning because God's dealt with me. But you see, because as a kid in 6th grade, not only did I think, well, you are stupid, you're stupid enough to believe that anybody's going to believe what you said. You have no idea the pathways. Now, I acted like I was fine. But here's what happened. Because I have good parents. They were like, get him out of that class. Because I wasn't high enough academically, I didn't go up a level. I went down a level. Because you're on one level for all your classes. So then I ended up in a class where people were dancing on the desks. And I've never been good at dancing, so I didn't fit in very well. But it was no focusing going on in there. Nothing. So not only was I telling myself, you're dumb, I was told I was dumb by a teacher, and then because I wasn't believed or whatever, next thing you know, I'm sitting in classes where, guess what? I think I'm dumb. Right? What do you expect, Rusty? So then, the next several years of school, I was up and down, up and down. Got to 10th grade, and here's where the good thing. Let me just stop for a second. What did I experienced? I lost something that day that I can't even put into words. Your words matter so much. Do you know that? Your words, yes, I'm talking to you. Your words matter more than you could ever possibly understand. The things that you say to yourself, first and foremost, matter so much. That's why it's so important. By the way, I know I'm not stupid, all right? So please don't come up to me after and be like, hey, man, I just want you to know, like, you're not stupid. I don't think you're stupid. It's good. I know I'm not stupid, all right? But I do know that had a dramatic impact on my life. And I lost something. And I didn't think I would be able to regain that. Fast forward to 10th grade where I wasn't hanging around with the best people. Now, I never did anything illegal. I've never done a drug in my life. I've never gotten drunk in my life. Ever. Okay? But Mom and Dad, I missed a few days of school that year that you may not have known about. They're here, by the way. I think my dad saw me the one day, but whatever. Long story, I know. But why am I telling you this? Because I went through some terrible things. 10th grade, I almost failed out of 10th grade, had to go to summer school. And then by the time I was done, my mom said, now look, All the moms, they're the real tough ones in the house, aren't they? Yeah. Yeah, don't mess with mom. And mom said, I called the school. You got 2 classes in summer school this year. And she said, and you have got to start hanging around with different people. I don't know what's going on. I don't know what you've been doing, but clearly you haven't been doing anything with schoolwork. And so, long story short, I got involved. My guidance counselor said, if you could just do something you would enjoy, and I got involved in the television department of our school. I was not supposed to be able to because my grades were bad, but Mr. Koya, teacher of the year, man, changed my life. He accepted me into it anyway. He used to call me Mr. Willams. I called him Mr. Koya. He called me Mr. Williams. He treated it like a job. He gave me responsibility. When he wasn't there, he used to leave the whole department in my lead, right? This guy, he changed everything about the way I saw school. And he began to show me that I wasn't stupid. He began to show me that I had a lot of abilities, that I was actually really smart. And he began to give me responsibility, leadership responsibility. And he treated it like a job. He invited me to his, he actually got Teacher of the Year. He invited me. I was one of 4 people that got invited to his Teacher of the Year dinner. 11th and 12th grade, I was in that class. It changed everything about school for me. I got on the honor roll my 11th and 12th grade year. That is a miracle in and of itself. Why am I telling you that story? It was a long story. I don't care, because I want you to know that you don't have to have gone bankrupt. You don't have to have lost somebody close to you in your life. It will happen someday. You don't have to have gone through the life-altering things that you read about in the paper or see on the news. That you could have just had somebody who one day decided to come into agreement with your deepest and darkest thought about yourself and forever set you on a track, at least what feels like forever, that you don't think you can recover from. You see, this blind man, he had lost something, and he knew what it was supposed to look like. Think about that. He knew what it was supposed to look like. All these years, he's in the village. He knows what it's supposed to look like. He knows what people are supposed to look like, but he can't see the beauty of what they look like. Can't see the color of their eyes. He knows what the trees are supposed to look like, but all he can do is walk around and smell them and hear them. He can't see what's going on. He has no idea whether he can trust somebody or not trust them right away. He is totally at the dependence of other people. And all these years, this guy's going, I know what it's supposed to look like. I know what it's supposed to look like. I know what it's supposed to look like, but I just can't see it. How many of you have experienced a loss in your life and you need God to restore you, and you know what it's supposed to look like, but you can't see it? It's not clear. The reality of it hasn't happened. You know what it's supposed to look like to have that relationship with your child that maybe hasn't been good for a long time. You know what it's supposed to look like, but you just can't see it right now. You know what it's supposed to look like to get rid of that illness that you've been dealing with for so long, but you just can't see it right now. You know what it's supposed to look like to be able to walk into the room and look at your wife or your husband in the eyes and say, I love you. But because of the past that you have and the way that you were raised, it's so hard for you to tell somebody to their eyes that you love them. You know what it's supposed to look like, but you just can't see it. You look in the mirror and you know what it's supposed to look like, but you just can't see it. All you see are the warts. All you see are the blemishes. And that's what this man was dealing with. He knew what it was supposed to look like, but he couldn't see it. And then he reaches this point where Jesus says, well, there you go. What do you see? He's like, well, I see people, but they look like trees walking around. Now, how many of you, don't raise your hand, but be honest, that when you read that, you were like, well, Jesus just didn't get it. Didn't get it the first time. Just, I don't know. Man, look at that. Jesus, just didn't happen. Had to try again. No. Jesus doesn't make mistakes. How many of you know Jesus doesn't make mistakes? He doesn't make mistakes. He knows everything that we need. And I believe that what Jesus wanted to do was deal with the emotional pain of the loss that he experienced all of these years. That's what I believe, because I believe that, first of all, he was in the village. He was not at home, okay? He was these people. He was dependent on these people around him, and who knows what he had experienced. But I'm sure that there was a lot of different remedy things. In fact, one of the popular remedies back then was to put saliva in people's eyes. There's even stuff you can read about now. I don't recommend it. But you can get on there and read about some of the things that people want to do with saliva to bring healing. But I'm sure that there were people who had come up to him and said, here, try this, try that. Here, I heard this guy. Some of you are dealing with that in your life right now. That's why anytime we share a story about what we're dealing with, don't come up to me and be like, hey, listen, man, I don't, because sometimes we don't want to get all that like info at one time. But people, I'm sure, had come up to him and said, I know this guy, he can do this, he can do that. That was, in their eyes, it was like, hey, we bring Jesus. We bring him to Jesus because we've seen the things he's done. Maybe he can do something here. And I believe that this man had experienced a lot of disappointment. I believe that he had gotten his hopes up. I believe that there were times where he really thought that he was going to regain his sight. And time after time after time after time, he would get his hopes up and be let down. Get his hopes up, be let down. I can trust this person. That person took advantage of me. This person's really going to help me out. Oh, they didn't really help me out. This person really cares about me and only me, and they're not in it for selfish gain to take advantage of me and use me because of my deficiency in any way, and then let down. I imagine he went through those things. And I believe that initial letdown of, but, yes, I see, but, it wasn't even like he was like, I see, I don't even care if they look like trees. At least I can see something. No, there was a disappointment there. You would be too. It'd be like, listen, you can have vision, but you're never going to be able to do anything. Is that all right? Would that be okay? Like, no, look, if you're going to give me vision, give me vision. And so I believe that there is something here. There's two healings that happen. I believe that Jesus wanted to minister to the loss, to the hurt, to the pain, something that he had given up. I believe that he wanted to show him that, yeah, you know what, disappointment comes, but I'm about to change the story. And it says in verse 25, then Jesus laid his hands on his eyes again, and he opened his eyes, his sight was restored, and he saw everything clearly. He saw everything clearly. You see, think about what some of the fruits are of the restoration of Jesus. Clarity. If you feel aimless in your mission right now in life and what you're called to do, it's not about, well, I think maybe there could be. Listen, when you go to Jesus, when there is restoration of a direction, restoration of a mission, restoration of a purpose, there is clarity. Listen, for those of you that are in the room today that are like on the north side of like 45 and you're approaching 50 and then you're in between 50 and 60 and all of that. One of the things that is so real is you can begin to wonder, is there a place for me as far as what I always wanted to do? And some of you that in the room are like 70, be like, Rusty, you haven't seen nothing yet. Are you kidding me? Is there a place for you? No, really. There are people who are 45, 50 years old that are going, I just want somebody to it's like you're riding the bench, and I just want somebody to put me into the game. I want to be able to do what I came out of college wanting to do. I want to be able to have that same impact. And it seems like at this point in my life, I don't have the same opportunities. What gives? Put me in, coach. Put me in. You're wondering what your purpose is. And one of the fruits of God's clarity or restoration is clarity. It's when you have something back that you lost. This guy had lost something. What was once not right is now right. These are the fruits of his restoration. I want to tell you something. Everybody in this room this morning needs to be restored in some way. Everybody. I don't care who you are. I don't care how old you are. You know, I mentioned it kind of as a joke, but people that are 70 and 75 years old, some of what you're looking at is, what does my life look at between now and the next 5 years? What does God have? What is his purpose for my life? Is there meaning? Can I find meaning in what I'm doing? Can I find meaning? Some of you just want to be able to find meaning. You haven't sensed meaning in what you've been doing for a long time. I'll be vulnerable again with you. A lot of you will say to me when I see you on Sunday mornings, I was asked my husband the other day, is Rusty still there? Where is he? I'm like, well, I've been upstairs and behind the scenes and everything. Listen, you're talking to somebody who for all my ministry was always with people, always in the front, pastored a couple of churches, right? It's totally outside of my comfort zone to be behind the scenes as far as I am energized by being with people. And I'm going to be vulnerable. There have been times where I'm like, man, I feel like am I having an impact? And please, there again, I've dealt with it. Don't come up to me like, man, I just want you to know. So impactful. But no, these are human emotions. This is flesh speaking out. You're not having the same impact. Can I tell you, just recently, God just said to me, Rusty, when you jump in and you help people get where they want to go, like on our staff, you are having such an impact. He spoke that truth to me. And I was like, well, why wouldn't that be good enough for me? That ought to be absolutely, you ought to wake up every day, and if God speaks that truth into you and say, I am impacting people. I am helping somebody get where they need to go. They didn't know how to do that, and I helped them, and now they know how to do that, and now in their ministry, they're going to be able to impact people even further. You and your job, maybe there's somebody younger that's coming up and you used to do what they do. And you're like, well, apparently I can't do it the same anymore. So I got this person and they want me to show them. Yeah, there's reward in imparting to people. You may think you lost something, but what you don't want to be blind to is that it's an opportunity to gain something, to see clearer. You see, that first touch was to point out his loss, and God has maybe shown that to you, but he wants to continue the process of healing in your life and show you that there is so much to be gained. There is clarity on the way. Verse 26 says, and he sent him to his home saying, do not even enter the village. Jesus does this over and over again. Chapter 7, he heals the guy who can't hear, and he's like, hey, come over here. Let's get away from all these people. He heals the demon-possessed man in Mark chapter 5. And he's like, I want to go with you. I want to hang out with you. He's like, nope, I want you to go home and tell everybody what God has done for you. He's always sending people home. All right, now, and he said, don't you dare go back into the village. I put the dare part in, but you can get it. He said, do not even enter the village. He sent him home. And I believe that, again, what he's trying to show him is that all the routes that you have been taking to try to get somewhere with all of this, it's time to change it. It's time, you need to go home. You need to be with those that you love. You need to be with your family. And because these people, they're going to be wrapped up in the miracle of this, but I want you to spend time thinking about how I've changed your life. I didn't just heal your physical ailment. I healed something inside. I restored something that was lost. Now, I have a question for you. What have you lost that you need Jesus to restore? I mean, really, take a moment. What have you lost? What don't you see right now that if you could see it would change everything? What relationship don't you see where it's supposed to be that if you could eventually realize it and see it would change everything? What truth could you speak over your spouse that if they could hear you say it would change so much? But you haven't seen that happen yet. Why? Why haven't you seen that happen yet? What story of vulnerability like I shared this morning do you need to share with somebody so that God could encourage them and impact them? But you haven't seen it happen. See, sometimes we think about everything going wrong. You ever notice sometimes in preaching, and I hate when I do this, but like we can make it sound like, boy, everybody's life just must be falling apart. You people, wow, is anything good happening here? There's a lot of good happening. And on the positive side, what is the good that God wants to do through you that you haven't seen? You know what it's supposed to look like, but you can't see it. Maybe you don't see it because you haven't stepped out. Maybe you don't see it because you believe the lie about yourself that that's not me. That's something you dream about. What have you lost that you need Jesus to restore? What is it? The team is going to come up. Just take a moment. Listen, the atmosphere is what you create around you right now as far as getting into that attitude of having an open heart. I can't do that for you. There's something that Jesus wants to restore in your life. He wants to help you to see. How many of you would like to see better? Spiritually. You'd like to see better. You'd like to see further. You'd like to see clearer. Why don't you close your eyes for a minute? You know, I want to pray for those here this morning who don't even know what it would look like. That's the last question. What would it look like for you to see clearly? And there's some that just don't even know what it would look like to even experience Jesus right now. And some of you have given your heart to him. Some of you said, oh no, I know Jesus, Rusty, but I don't feel him. I don't sense him. I was here last night praying, and I do not tell you that to impress you, because the bottom line is before I prayed, I spent a long time struggling to focus on God. Yeah. I just was struggling. Texted my wife at one point and said, hey, I am struggling to focus right now. And you know, even though I've experienced God's goodness and I've experienced his presence before, when we deal with that, in that moment, we know what it's supposed to look like, but we just can't see it. So Rusty, I pray, but it goes nowhere. I call out to God, but nothing happens. I just can't. I just can't get there. I can't get in the moment. And do you know what I did? I came down here and I just turned on some lights, not real bright. And I just began to walk through this room and begin to praise God and just give him thanks. And I just began to confess to him that I couldn't see it. I know what it's supposed to look like. The exact words I said. I know what it's supposed to look like, but I can't see it. And I began to just lift my hands. Would you lift your hands this morning? You don't need to stand up. Just lift your hands. Be in a posture of praise. And I just begin to worship God. You know, it's easier to do it in a room full of hundreds of people than it is by yourself sometimes. And I begin to worship him and give him thanks. Would you begin to just give him thanks? Would you just thank him for his goodness? Would you thank him for all the good things he's done in your life? The reason you know what it's supposed to look like is because you've been there before. You've experienced it before. Begin to give him thanks for how he has shown himself to you over the years. How he's brought you to where you are. That you got here this morning. That you're not living in worry about your survival, I don't believe. Maybe there's somebody. Just give him thanks. Give him thanks that you have breath. You have breath. The voice of God thunders over your life just as it does over the vastness of the waters. He cares about every hurt that's happened in your life the same way he did that man. He didn't want to just do a quick touch and move on his way. He said, I want a relationship with you. Come with me. We're really going to delve into this. Come, walk with me. He's saying that to you this morning. Come, walk with me. I love you. I care about you. Just begin to focus on me. Tell me that you love me. I'll rekindle that, but I'm going to take you to something deeper that you haven't experienced before. You're looking to see what you used to see. I'm going to help you see better. I'm going to give you clear vision. Just open up your heart to him and worship him as we sing.